Hi, everybody. I woke up to the very sad news that Eric Wagner, former singer for the Chicago doom metal band Trouble and current singer for the band The Skull, has passed away at the age of 62. This is really tragic news because Eric was one of the greatest doom metal singers, and I don't think I've ever really told my journey into doom metal story. I may have mentioned it or alluded to it at times. I know that I did a video with some friends doing the like a history of doom metal, and Trouble came up many times in that discussion. And for me, I discovered doom like about the mid 90s, and discovering doom metal for me was kind of like when I discovered heavy metal for the first time. It was so exciting. I was so into it. It felt like I was discovering new great bands every week. These were the early days of the internet, so it was still sort of hard to find information on bands. But it was a really exciting time for me, and the bands that I was most into at that time were Pentagram, Candlemass, Saint Vitus, and Trouble. So hearing the news of Eric's passing is just really sad. He had an amazing voice. He had a really unique voice. He had a high range, but it had like sort of this raspy quality to it, and he had a doomy doom metal voice. It just fit the sound of Trouble so well, and those early Trouble records are just so great. So I thought I would take the time today to just talk about a few of the Trouble albums that I have here in my collection as a tribute to Eric. All right, so the first one I have here is their first album, Psalm number 9, and this is just, it's so heavy. It should be noted, Trouble, as I mentioned earlier, was from Chicago, and they were really kind of ahead of the game a little bit with the whole doom metal thing. Psalm number 9 came out in 1984 on Metal Blade Records, and this is 2 years before Candlemass would release Epicus Doomicus Metallicus, and I know that the guys in Candlemass cite Trouble as a very big influence. In some ways, they say they were kind of there in Sweden doing their thing, thinking they were the only band in the world sort of doing this kind of Sabbath type, heavy Sabbath, slow, epic riffing. And then they heard Trouble and realized, like, wow, there's another band that's already out there doing what we're doing. And this is just an amazing album. The Tempter, Assassin, Bastards Will Pay, Fall of Lucifer. Trouble was a band that was labeled early on as like white metal, and I don't know how much of the personal beliefs of the guys in the band, but they did, some of their lyrical subject matter did deal with things like that, like Psalm number 9, End Time. Yeah, so it was something that came up in their lyrics. But this is just a great heavy riffing album. It's kind of, for me, Trouble was like taking like early Judas Priest and mixing it with heavy Black Sabbath riffing. So you had these crushing riffs. You had just the amazing, guitar playing. The guitars were so heavy on these records. You had Bruce Franklin and Rick Wartell on guitars, Sean McAllister on bass on this one, Jeff Olson on drums. And the guitars just have this awesome, heavy, metallic, again, sort of like Judas Priest, but mixed with Black Sabbath. So just an incredible album. All right, and then next is The Skull. Maybe my favorite Trouble record. These first three Trouble albums for me are just stone cold doom metal classics. Same lineup as the first album. This has great songs on it: Fear No Evil, Wickedness of Man, Gideon, and the epic closing track, the title track, The Skull, is just crushing and amazing heavy doom metal. That's the thing. Like, Trouble for me is a doom metal band. They're doom, but they also have this strong metal element to what they do. So this is just an incredible record. Eric again had this great voice where, he had this tone to his voice that added to the atmosphere of all these records. All right, next from 1987 is Run to the Light. This is Dennis Lesh would come in on drums, and Ron Holzner would come in on bass, I believe. I don't have who's on this one, but so this album is amazing also. I love this record. So heavy. The Misery Shows, Thinking of the Past, On Borrowed Time, the title track Run to the Light, Tuesday's Child, the beginning. It's just great, great crushing doom metal. So many great riffs. Eric's vocals just soaring above the top of that. And, he had this sort of, never sounded like he was screaming, but he had like a raspy quality to his voice that he was able to really, that just sounded great. And I saw them live a bunch of times, and the first time I saw them live, they were just so heavy. His voice sounded great. I had a chance to talk to him for a little bit in the audience. All right, and the last one that I have on vinyl is their 1990 Trouble album. This would be produced by Rick Rubin. This has a lot of great songs on it. And At the End of My Days, The Misery Shows, Act 2. I always love this album cover. There's Eric right there. So this is just tragic news. A doom metal legend. Trouble, sadly, was a band that never really got the recognition that they deserve. I think in the last so many years with the dawn of the internet, people began to sing their praises more, but they never really had a chance to break out big or anything. Eric would go on to have his most recent group, The Skull, which I do have their CD. I just wasn't able to find it, and that was a great album too, kind of mixing like the heavy, a little bit of a heavy 70s vibe to it too, something that Trouble did mix into their sound. So a really sad, tragic loss that we've lost the amazing doom metal vocalist Eric Wagner. So a short little tribute to him. So Eric Wagner, rest in peace.